I knew money changed people, but seeing that moment in front of me was pretty mentally exhausting. Because as soon as my ex-husband, who was kind, found out I inherited a legacy, and my former in-laws with whom I had a decent relationship, both changed. Well, it's more like they revealed their true colors. In the end, we divorced for various reasons, and my in-laws became strangers. Rumor has it that their household is still in chaos and disarray. I had an aunt, my mother's sister, who passed away a few years ago. She was a career woman and an investor from a young age. My mother used to say, "Your aunt seems to have quite a fortune." I wasn't really interested in my aunt's wealth, so I only casually asked about it. Even so, I wasn't interested in how much my aunt's assets were, so I was okay. She was more careful with her money, only spending on things she needed. For example, she cooked her meals mostly at home using ordinary supermarket ingredients and bought a few high-quality clothes to wear for a long time instead of buying lots of clothes. I admired my aunt's values and lifestyle, but during her time, there was a strong prejudice against women who earned more than men. People looked down on her, thinking she was arrogant. Besides, there was a strong stereotype that a woman's happiness was to get married and have children. So my aunt, who never got married and had no children, and enjoyed her own life, was considered an outsider. However, my aunt never let those heartless comments get to her. She proudly carried herself and didn't care what others thought. I admired that about her. One day, when I visited her at her house, she suddenly said to me as we were sitting on the sofa drinking tea, "Hey, if something happens to me, I want you to be my heir." It was so sudden that I couldn't help but ask what she meant. She explained, "You know, I never got married or had children. That means I won't have anyone to inherit my wealth after I'm gone. But I don't want to leave my money to those people who looked down on me and made fun of me all the time. Of course, I'll prepare all the necessary documents for the inheritance, and I want to officially designate you as the heir." She said it with a smile but in a serious tone. I, on the other hand, nonchalantly agreed, thinking it was just a joke. At that time, my aunt was still in her 40s, and the idea of her passing away felt like something far in the future, maybe 30 or 40 years from then. I was also a high school student, and I didn't know at all about inheritance, so I didn't take her words seriously. Time passed, and I got married, had children, and became busy with work and childcare. When my youngest child graduated and became a working adult, my mother told me that my aunt's health wasn't doing well. I rushed to the hospital my aunt was admitted to, only to find her looking healthy as ever, denying that she was in poor health. She reassured me that it was just a routine checkup and that she was perfectly fine, wearing her usual bright smile. I was relieved then, but her condition was actually not good, and she was just trying not to worry me. As evidence, my aunt was in and out of the hospital repeatedly. Each time, I would go to the hospital with my child to see my aunt. She was clearly weakening as the days went by. She became increasingly frail, with sunken cheeks and a thin body, almost like skin and bones. Yet, she continued to wear that same cheerful smile, and I couldn't help but admire her strength. I thought maybe a miracle could happen, given how she maintained that same smile I had known since my childhood. However, in the end, my aunt passed away. After her passing, we held a small funeral with close relatives. I deeply regretted not spending more time with her. I wished I had met her more often, gone out together, and created more memories. But I knew it was too late to dwell on what-ifs after she was gone. My children also loved my aunt, and they were upset too, feeling like they wanted to talk to her more. It was heartbreaking to see. Then, a few months after my aunt passed away, when I still couldn't sort out my feelings, my ex-husband came home from work and handed me an A4 size brown envelope saying something had arrived. I received a letter and wondered what it was. When I checked the sender, it turned out to be from a law firm. I couldn't remember ever seeking help from a lawyer, so I panicked a bit. I thought, did I get involved in some kind of crime? With trembling hands, I opened the envelope to see what was inside. To my surprise, the letter was about my aunt's inheritance. In that moment, I realized that what my aunt had said to me that day was serious. To find out more details, I decided to contact the law firm and hear what they had to say. The lawyer there was an old friend of my aunt's, and she had entrusted him with handling her estate and inheritance after she passed away. When he told me the total amount of my aunt's assets, I was stunned. It wasn't just a few million yen, it was over 400 million yen. Feeling panicked again, I called my mother after hearing the lawyer's explanation. She casually responded, "Well, didn't your aunt talk to you about becoming her heir? She discussed it with you after you graduated from high school, and I said it was fine as long as both of you agreed." I was utterly surprised by her nonchalant response, but considering the huge sum of money, I was unsure of what to do. However, my mother calmly advised me to accept the inheritance, reminding me that my aunt had prepared all the necessary documents for me, and it would be a waste not to take it, saying I might face punishment otherwise. I asked my mother if she wanted to inherit the money instead, and she replied casually, "Inheritance can be a real hassle. I don't think you know, but there was a person among and Ma's siblings who passed away. That person had a considerable inheritance, but they didn't leave a will. As a result, the siblings and the children of that person ended up fighting every day over the money. But your aunt left everything in proper documents for you, right? So, there's no drama for me to get involved in. However, you might want to be cautious with your grandparents and your husband." She sighed as if remembering the past and offered this warning. I was surprised to hear that my husband's family might also cause trouble over the inheritance, but I didn't think it would become a reality later on. A few days later, my ex-husband, who seemed restless, asked me if the documents from the law firm were about the inheritance. I wondered how he knew, but there was no reason to hide it, so I honestly confirmed it. His eyes gleamed as he heard the news and immediately asked how much I inherited. I casually brushed it off, saying it was around 10 million yen. However, he seemed to sense that I was lying about the amount. After that, he kept insisting that there might be more money or that I should investigate further. At first, I tried to play along and avoid his questions, but it became so annoying that I finally said, "I told you it was 10 million yen. Why do you keep asking?" His response was uncertain, as if he had doubts, but he said, "Well, I just have this feeling that it might be different," and gave an awkward reply. "Anyway, please let this conversation end." I firmly refused, but strangely, from the next day onward, my ex-husband's attitude changed drastically, and he started ignoring me. But I was also stubborn, so we went 2 months without speaking to each other. Suddenly, my former in-laws, who used to live nearby, visited our house without any prior notice. Normally, they would let us know in advance if they wanted to come over, so I thought something serious might have happened. Then, my former father-in-law said, "We heard from our son that you recently inherited some assets. Moreover, we heard it's over 1 billion yen. Our house is getting old, and we were thinking of renovating it. Your husband got such a good wife, and we're proud as parents. By the way, we thought about expanding the rooms for the two of you, and maybe even living together." My ex-mother-in-law nodded along. I was surprised that my ex-husband knew the true amount of the inheritance I inherited, but I was also surprised at my ex-in-law's parents who rallied on that money to make a renovation plan without permission. After that, they kept talking about how they wanted a kitchen with a particular design they had dreamed of, and how they wanted marble, and after a while I came to my senses and said I didn't hear anything about that. We had already asked an agency to do it. My ex-in-law made another outrageous comment. It was obvious that they were counting on my money, and it gave me a headache that they didn't think it was strange at all. I had a lot of things I wanted to say, but I didn't want to let my emotions get the best of me. So, I asked them to leave for the day and kicked them out of the house. That night, when I returned home from work, I confronted my ex-husband. At first, he tried to dodge the question, but I persistently asked him, and he finally admitted that he had looked at the passbook of the inherited assets without my permission. By the way, I had kept the inherited passbook deep in my dresser. In other words, he went through the whole room and reached into the back of the dresser to find it. I was fed up with his relentless pursuit and obsession, and when I told him about his parents coming and asking about the inheritance, he got angry and said, "Your earnings as a wife are joint assets, so it's mine too. It's only natural for me to use it to renovate my parents' house." and it's your fault for not telling me the exact inheritance amount." He justified his actions and treated me as the villain. Even worse, he suddenly made remarks about quitting his job as if it were related. I asked him to explain, and he confidently said, "With all that money you have, we can live without me working. It's a waste of time to do a job I don't like and stress myself out. We can live happily and stress-free with that money, and your status as a wife will also improve if we renovate my parents' house. It's all benefits, so why are you so upset?" He said this with a sigh, like he was exasperated. I realized he was a lost cause and thought, this guy is hopeless, so I said he could go ahead and do the renovation or whatever he wanted, but I wouldn't contribute any money. He got even angrier again. He said, "We are already taking," but I didn't care what he said. After that, he kept yelling and screaming, but I ignored him. Then, the next day, my ex-husband came with his parents to protest, saying that I was changing my story. So, I said to them, "Changing the story? Isn't it you guys who are taking without even consulting me? Besides, even if you had asked me, why should I have to pay any money? This money isn't for renovating your family's house, and it's definitely not to support your son who quit his job without discussing it with me." But he just went on ranting, saying things like how he had been good to me and calling me a money grubber. I was disillusioned that this was the nature of them, but it didn't matter anymore, so I told them to go home because there was nothing to talk about. My ex-husband asked, "What do you mean by that?" I replied, "Exactly what it means." Then he suddenly looked anxious. He said, "Are you planning to divorce me over this?" I just told him that any future discussions would involve lawyers and nothing more, and then ushered them out, leaving only the three of them. After that, I packed up my things and evacuated to a business hotel. Even afterward, my ex-husband kept contacting me, saying he would never divorce and that he loved me. I replied with a simple message, "You owe me my money, don't you?" and then turned off my phone. The next day, I went to my parents' house and explained the situation. They sighed and said they had anticipated this outcome. When they asked what I planned to do next, I said without hesitation that I would choose divorce. My mother advised me to fight thoroughly since they didn't seem willing to let me go. She also suggested I look into the possibility that my ex-husband might have done other things and recommended investigating. So I decided to give it a try and hired an investigator. It turned out my ex-husband had been frequently visiting nightclubs. It further solidified my decision to divorce. I then hired a divorce attorney who specialized in such cases and demanded a divorce from my ex-husband. But of course, he refused. Not only that, but he also insisted that if I wanted a divorce, I had to pay alimony and divide the property. When the attorney explained that the inheritance I received from my family wasn't considered marital property, my ex-husband started making a fuss, saying that couldn't be true. But when the attorney asked him if he would give his wife the money he inherited from his parents after they passed away, he fell silent. The attorney scolded my ex-husband about their unreasonable behavior. Finally, he broke down and pleaded for me to pay for the renovation. Of course, his request didn't hold any ground, and he looked utterly defeated. Later on, I found out that the renovation had already been arranged at that time, and he had signed the contract under his name, assuming I would pay for it. Moreover, it was a pretty luxurious renovation, totaling over $10 million. So, he was worried that he wouldn't be able to afford that money if we got divorced, and that's why he made such a claim. So, I had no reason for pay that money, whether we are divorced or not. Even after that, he tried to cut the price by half of the amount, but the attorney threatened to sue him for extortion if he asked for more. Finally, he gave up. But my ex-in-laws couldn't let go of it and attacked my parents' house later. In the end, my father ended up raising his hand against them, and they destroyed some potted plants outside before fleeing. The police came to investigate and had to take them away because they got aggressive with the officers. Of course, this whole incident spread throughout the neighborhood, and even after his release, it continued to be the talk of the town. In that flow, I also casually shared the situation with the gossip-loving neighbors, which further exposed the greedy nature of my ex-husband's family. Due to such developments, the divorce was eventually settled with my ex-husband giving in. However, even after that, I received occasional messages saying he still loved me and wanted to start over. So, I asked my lawyer for help again, and got a restraining order against him. But you know, those orders don't last forever. The maximum they can be effective is 6 months. Besides, he doesn't strike me as the type to obediently abide by such an order. I was afraid he might lose control and do something dangerous, so both my parents and I decided to move away from our former home. I felt sorry for my parents, leaving behind the place they were used to, but given the circumstances and the uncertain times we live in, we didn't have much choice. After the hurried move, when things finally settled down, I informed my children about the situation. Of course, they were surprised, but they sympathized with me and understood why we had to leave. After that, I was able to spend without any problems, but after all, I had a bad feeling. As I suspected, my ex-husband ignored the restraining order and was loitering around my parents' old neighborhood. Fortunately, a police officer passing by found him suspicious and stopped to question him. They discovered a small knife in his pocket, so he got arrested. When they asked about his intentions, he said he wanted to talk to his ex-wife, and that's when I shuddered, realizing he had heard about it from the lawyer who had helped us with the divorce. If I had stayed at my parents' house, thinking the restraining order would be enough. Though he was released early as no one got hurt, I couldn't bring myself to go near the location of my former parents' house because I was so scared. Since then, I hadn't known what happened to him for a while, but from what I heard from an acquaintance who lives near his parents' place, they can hear him and his family arguing almost every day from their renovated house. The content is mostly about money. They keep saying it's in your name, so you should pay, or that since it's your dad's house, he should be the one covering the expenses. It's like they don't even try to keep it down. Everyone can hear them arguing. Moreover, sometimes they hear strange noises, like things breaking, even after the renovation. It's gotten so bad that the police have had to go there to warn them. Also, sometimes they hear things like, "If you don't let your wife go, you'll have a good life now." Before the inheritance, their relationship with my ex-husband and his family was pretty good, but who would have thought that everything would become such a mess over money? Just as my mother warned me, I've truly realized how scary money can be. Occasionally, you can hear my ex-mother-in-law yelling at him to find a job quickly, and my ex-husband yelling back, "Shut up, it seems he's still unemployed." Well, considering his age, it's not easy to find a new job. Also, because I explained the messy divorce to the neighbors, everyone avoids getting involved with my ex-husband's family and doesn't want to be asked for money. There are even rumors that if you get close to that house, your financial luck will run away. I couldn't help but chuckle. They treat it like some kind of cursed temple. On the other hand, I rented a somewhat spacious apartment and am living with my parents. They tell me not to worry about them and prioritize my own life, but I don't plan on remarrying, so I want to keep living with them like this. If the others found out about the inheritance, they might change like my ex-husband did. Besides, I never had any expensive hobbies or spent money extravagantly, so I intend to continue living as I did before. So, I plan to use this money when my parents and myself become old and enter a facility, or to celebrate when my children get married or give birth. To be honest, it's not a small amount of money that can be easily spent, but it's the money my aunt, whom I admired, left for me, so I thought I'd like to use it in the same way as my aunt did. So, recently, while working a part-time job, I've also started learning about investments and money management. It's quite challenging, and it made me realize how amazing my aunt was to do this for years. As for us, we're leading a relatively content life. However, the updates I occasionally hear about my ex-husband and his family are still quite dreadful. But since we've divorced and become strangers, it's none of my business. They need to sort it out themselves without involving others. Thank you for watching until the end. See you again in the next video.